Good evening, everybody. My name is Bruce Flax, and I'm the president of the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined by Lisa Kanicki, president of the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce. We want to welcome to Stonington and Groton Candidates Night, presented by the two chambers. The Westerly Sun, Mystic River Press, WBLQ, 12:30 a.m., SEC TV, and Stonington Community Forum. Before we get underway, I'd like to ask all those in the room to please silence their cell phones. Thank you. The Candidates Forum is just one of the many chamber programs that responds to a community need and reaches beyond the chamber membership to serve the community members at large. The chambers are committed to providing residents with a valuable opportunity to gain insight into the individuals who will be serving as legislators at the State House. The chamber is nonpartisan and never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. Lisa?
We'd like to thank all of the candidates for making the decision to run for office. It demonstrates their commitment to the community and shows courage, of course. We're honored to have you here. We'd also like to thank LaGrua Center. Dan and his team have made us feel right at home, and we're so appreciative of their cooperation for hosting the event. We extend a warm welcome to our audience at home, as well as our audience that is here. We are streaming on the Ocean Community Chamber Facebook page, and there are folks that are listening live on WBLQ 12:30 a.m. And SEC TV is filming and will rebroadcast this program in its entirety in the future to help voters at home. To our live audience that's here, we're so happy you've joined us. To show respect to the candidates, the attendees, and those watching at home, there are rules for audience members as well. You are asked to refrain from conversations amongst yourself, cell phone use, or reacting in any manner to any aspect of this forum. Simply stated, we expect silence throughout the program. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our event moderator, Corey Fike. He is editor of the Westerly Sun and the Mystic River Press. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce and Lisa. Okay, testing. It works. It is a pleasure to be here and to participate in this important program. Some questions and topics were submitted by the public, but ultimately all questions were vetted in advance by myself and the chambers. At my left, Maria DiMaggio will be timing the candidate responses and holding up signs stating 30 seconds left, 10 seconds left, and time's up. Candidates have agreed to the rules in advance and to maintaining the event integrity as expected by both chambers. Before we begin with the question and answer portion of the forum, I'd like to explain how the process will work. Candidates will be given 1 minute for an introductory statement. As the media representative, I will ask a series of questions that all candidates will answer. We are only asking questions that address local issues. For the benefit of our viewers, please look toward the video cameras when responding. Each candidate will have 2 minutes maximum to answer the question. At the conclusion of the question and answer period, each candidate will have a 90-second closing statement. Time limits will be strictly enforced and there will be no interruptions of other candidates. We will hold up a 30 seconds left and a 10 seconds left warning sign to candidates at the appropriate times. When the red stop sign is held up, the candidate may finish their sentence only, not finish their thoughts on the matter. Please respect time limits. We don't want to interrupt you, but we will if necessary. The order in which candidates will answer each of the questions in their intro and closing statements were selected at random, with candidates present prior to the start of this forum. The candidates will start us off with a 1 minute maximum introduction statement. So let's get things underway with Greg Howard.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the Chamber and all the hosts of this event. My name is Greg Howard. I'm a 42-year-old husband and father of 2 sons who attend Stonington Public Schools. I'm a lifelong resident of the Westerly Pawcatuck area. My wife and I have been married for 14 years and currently raising our family in Pawcatuck. My public service began at age 14 as a volunteer for the Westerly Ambulance Corps, where I served for 25 years, rising all the way through an EMT cardiac and an instructor as well as an emergency dispatcher. 20 years ago tomorrow will mark the anniversary, tomorrow will mark the 20-year anniversary of my service to the town of Stonington as a police officer, field training officer, canine officer, and now a police detective. For the last 2 years, I've had the extreme honor of serving the 43rd District as a state representative. In Hartford, I serve in the Public Safety and Security Committee as the ranking member. I also serve in the Joint Committees on Judiciary and Appropriations. I very much love this community, and I love serving it. One of the things I'm most proud of is the Stonington Youth Football Program that we've run for 6 years as a Play for Free organization, ensuring every kid has an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Ashley Jalise.
All right, my name is Ashley Gleese. I currently reside in Pawcatuck. I have been living here for over 20 years. I am very proud that I have an amazing son who's currently in Pawcatuck with me, going through Stonington schools. One of the main reasons I chose to run and get involved this year is I've been involved locally for quite some time. I've served on multiple committees, including the charter reform years ago. One of my biggest things that I chose to get me involved this election was the constant struggle of working families across our district. I'm hoping to go to Hartford so that we can have a voice for all in the 43rd. No matter what town you live in, no matter what community or background you come from, I plan on being there to support all across the 43rd, and I look forward to continuing these conversations throughout the night.
Thank you. Andre Baumgartner.
Thank you. And first and foremost, want to extend my thanks to both the Stonington and the Stonington Chambers of Commerce, is consisting of the Mystic Chamber and the Ocean Chamber. It's very important that we share our experiences and our insights as to what we plan on doing for you. And so thank you again for putting on this great forum. My name is Andre Baumgartner, and I'm a former state representative, the only person in the race who has served at both the local and state levels. I've done that for the last 8 years, and I'm proud of the track record and the work we've done in our community in Groton. I'm a lifelong Groton resident, born and raised, and I'm proud of the community that has raised me, and look forward to continuing to give back to not just Groton, but now Stonington and the General Assembly. In this forum, look forward to sharing our vision and sharing our experiences at the doors, hearing your stories, and look forward to engaging in a respectful dialogue as well. Thank you.
Farouk Rajab.
Good evening. Welcome to Stonington. Welcome to my town. I've lived here for the last 22 years with my wife. We raised 3 boys in this beautiful town, and we did our best to give back to our community. I currently serve as the chairman of the Board of Education in Stonington, and I want you all to ask yourself the question, why? Why you think any of us is running for this job? And my wife asked me that question when I decided to run. My answer to her was, for our children. And I know I can do the job. I've done it in many levels, in many committees, in many boards I served on, and I challenge anybody here who knows me well to stand up and say, I can do it, and I'll do it on your behalf. And I thank you for being here, and thank you for participating in this forum.
Jake Dunnigan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jake Dunnigan. I am running for state representative in the 41st District, which recently got redrawn. One of the things that I really love about this place in my life here is that it has given me a future that I want to live in. I moved here in 2012 after starting my own business and failing completely, but I was 25. It was a nice time to lose all my money. And I own this district and this place. This place, I chose it. And there are things that we can do here that all of us agree on, or that a vast majority of us agree on. And the two parties, the way that they dissect each of the issues drives us further and further apart from each other. And I think that there's another way, and that way is through the middle and together. Thank you.
Robert Boris.
Hi. First, let me thank the Chambers of Commerce. Sorry. First, let me thank the Chambers of Commerce, Andre, Jake, and the other candidates for being here tonight. I'm Robert Boris. I'm a single dad, technology entrepreneur.
Hold the mic right to your mouth. Thank you.
Sorry?
Hold the mic to your mouth.
Got it. Okay. I have two daughters, Ava and Olivia. Ava's 17, Olivia's 15, and being their dad is the greatest role of my life. I want to make our community affordable for their generation. I want to create opportunity. I want to prepare our children to succeed in the modern technological world we live in. To do all that for everyone in the community, we need to create well-paying jobs, access to affordable healthcare, and so much more. I see win-wins. I bring people together. I see what we can accomplish when we work together. So I think there's reasonable common sense solutions to the challenges and the opportunities we face, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Heather Summers.
Yes, good evening. My name is Heather Summers, and I am currently the senator who is now finishing up my 6th year in the Senate. In the Senate, I have had a vast experience. I've sat on Public Health, the Environment Committee, the Powerful Appropriations, Transportation, Planning and Development, and Executive Nominations. And I have always chosen policies that put people over party or politics. My focal points in public health have been mental health, access to quality health care, and it's been verified by my endorsement by Planned Parenthood and the Independent Party. I look forward to this discussion today that we'll have on the issues concerning our district and showing and showcasing to you why I am the best candidate for the 18th district. In addition, I would just like to say for many of the people living in my district who are from Florida, our hearts and our thoughts are with you dealing with this horrible devastation of Hurricane Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now for the first question. Once elected, what are your top priorities and what bills would you propose to address these issues? First up is Jake Dunnigan.
Okay. So one of my top priorities is that the thing that is driving our politics to be as stressful and as sort of, I'm going to say incompetent, but I don't mean it as negatively as it sounds, is that each of the districts that we draw become redder and bluer in the method that we do it. And by creating districts that are more and more secure for each of the parties, we end up with politicians and policies that are ever more divergent from the common beliefs of the electorate generally. And so one thing that we can do is we can change how we redraw districts, and that's by taking the power away from the parties, because there's no incentive for them to actually make a district competitive. Why would they want to fight over something? So we could do that by simply having a panel or a non-interested party ensure that competitiveness in a district is part of the problem, or is part of the division of the map. Excuse me, I'm learning. This is my first time. And the second thing is that in order to get off of fossil fuels, we need to be doing grid level energy storage now. And it takes 15 years to build, and the programs that we have in place are 1,000 megawatts in 10 years for individuals and corporations to implement on their own, which just leads to a grid and a system where people who already had money are being incentivized to move us off of that. We, as the people, need systems in place for a grid that allows us to use intermittent sources and get off of fossil fuels generally. And there's plenty more. Check out my website. Thank you very much.
Greg Howard.
Thank you. Two of my top priorities start with taxes. Right now, we have a budget surplus. I think everybody sort of knows that. We ran this year an amendment for $1.2 billion in tax cuts, which included a reduction in income tax from 5% to 4% for 75,000 individual single filers, 175,000 for joint filers. We immediately reduced the sales and use tax to 5.99%. We get rid of the highway use tax that's hurting our farmers. And we have a list of ways where that spending or that revenue loss would come from in spending. It includes things like $2.5 million for elevator inspectors that aren't even state elevator inspectors, $50,000 for our very own rail center. $1.5 million to study at Brainerd Airport yet again, $2 million to establish nonstop air service to Jamaica from the state of Connecticut. These are things that I don't think are legitimate government function, and I have a list of them. And for too long, we have continued to take from hardworking people and discouraged individuals from going to work, getting jobs, and we have businesses that are hurting, not because they don't have people that want to come in and be customers, but because they can't find people to help, and that's become a real problem. And the second thing that I am definitely focused on is our education. It's no secret that Connecticut students fell behind during COVID mitigation procedures. Not only in testing scores relative year over year, but nationally with the people that the other kids that they're gonna compete against, not only for college enrollment, but also in the workforce. And we can use our public education to develop our workforce where we are having aging tradesmen's population. Electric Boat, one of the biggest employers in our area, is set to hire 15,000 people over the next 30 years, and they are having trouble finding tradesmen or tradeswomen. And I have a plan to work through HBI and with schools through grant programs to allow individuals who are in school, who are going to the trades field, to stay in the school with their friends where they don't have to transfer to a trade school necessarily, but can partner with a business locally. And I have a plan for state grants to do that, to incentivize them to get into the trades field. Thank you.
Andre Baumgartner?
Thank you. When I go door to door, I hear about the kitchen table issues confronting our community. The cost of living, inflation, the skyrocketing cost of energy and fuel prices. These are real struggles that so many folks in our community are confronting every day, confronting how they're going to put food on their table. And so in order to have representation that supports policies and provides solutions to these families, you have to come from those experiences. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to make ends meet, and it's so important that we roll up our sleeves when we get to Hartford and fight for working families here in Connecticut. Yes, tax cuts ought to be on the table, especially if they are for our middle-class families. We have to provide relief. But we also have to ensure that we're making critical investments in infrastructure, critical investments in our schools, just as we've done in my time on both this, as state representative and on the town council. Historic investments in our new schools, historic investments in our transportation, actually not bonding, which saves quite a bit of funds for the taxpayers in the long run. So in this campaign, I focused on what I call the 5 E's: our economic recovery, educational excellence, energy affordability, environmental quality, and ethics reform. All 5 of those aspects are critically important to our district. Be happy to get go more in depth throughout this discussion. As Jake stated, you can always visit my website at andreaundre4ct.com to learn more about my specific policy proposals as it relates to those 5 core principles. But this district is a very unique district. It now includes Stonington. It used to be a Groton-based district with a little piece of New London, but now having Stonington, there are unique sets of issues, including fighting for our fishing fleet, fighting for environmental quality, and I plan on doing so. Thank you.
Farouk Rajab.
Thank you. Taxes is one of the biggest burden we are facing here in Connecticut, and the quality, the affordability of living is impacted by those taxes as well. So one of the first things that I will prioritize is eliminating the gas tax once and for all, eliminate the car tax as well. And we need to do more in education. Education in pre-K through 12 is the foundation that we build the future on. On my service on the Board of Education, I've learned a lot about that education field and how important it is for our children. And we need to do more. Stonington is one of the first districts to introduce programs to support kids who choose not to go to college. And if they choose to go into industries or into plumbing or electricians, and we'll be launching it. We launched it this year, and we'll do a ribbon cutting on Monday. So we're proud of that program, and we should do more of that across the entire state. Environment is very important for us in the 18th, and protecting that environment and shoreline resiliency is important. So those are topics that I'll be focused on, and I'll be working on introducing legislations to improve them. as well as hospitality and tourism. That's my experience, and that's where I spent the last 30 years of my life working in. So we have hospitality tax or tourism tax that goes to the general fund. I strongly believe that that tax should be directed towards marketing the regions. So I will make sure that money goes towards improving tourism in our region. Thank you.
Robert Boris?
Well, thank you. Should I have the honor of being elected? One of my top issues is really sort of a point of order issue, making sure that we have local voices in the decisions we're making. I think we have a housing issue. We have a lot of challenges that we have to address, and I think it's very important that decisions are made locally and not in Hartford. There's a lot of there's a camp in Hartford that wants to that decides that they have a better approach to addressing our housing crisis, and they're looking to pull away some local control and oversight. And we're seeing issues in Groton. We have an issue with the Mystic Oral School that didn't have local community input, and they're dealing with a developer that the community was involved in the decision making, and a developer was picked that there's not a confidence level about that, and it's a state property, and it's an example of what happens when local control and local community input is not placed at the top of the list. So I just want to start out with that. If the philosophical approach I have in representing this district is that everyone's voice here is the first voice to address the issues. We all know locally, I'm a Republican and an independent, and I trust the Democrats in our community that are local to make those decisions. They're the majority here, rather than someone far away that doesn't understand our local needs. So when we're talking about other issues throughout the debate, I just think it's important that you all understand that as a representative, I take it very seriously that, especially in the modern world, I'm able to understand how you feel about issues and be sure that I'm reflecting those issues in Hartford and pushing back against Hartford taking control. Thank you.
Ashley, Jaleese?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. This has come down to one thing and one thing only for me. One of the things we address every single day now is affordability. As a single mom, I've seen the direct impacts of the last 2 years and inflation rates as it's affecting working families across our district. One of my key priorities this session would be to focus on making sure everyone has the ability to afford to live here in the 43rd district. This would include whether you're a senior who's obviously been directly impacted by rising energy costs. This includes our families who are having trouble to provide the food they need and get it on the table. Affordability is so much more, and I bring this up because it kind of encompasses everything we believe. When we look at affordability, when we look at rising healthcare costs that are just unaffordable, these are things that we need to be standing up and fighting for right now. This has been a key focus of mine. It's a key problem I hear on the doors every single day. This past year, the state of Connecticut was fortunate enough to pass a tax break for working families of over $600 million in the legislature. These are tax breaks we need to continue to ensure are there for our hardworking families, and this is something we can focus on for 2 years. I also bring up healthcare. We are constantly looking at increases in healthcare, and whether you're a senior citizen, whether you are a young family, or you are somebody who is advanced in your career, healthcare costs are rising. We need to stand up and fight back and look at alternatives on how we provide adequate healthcare and affordable healthcare to all in our state. The other one main reason I'm running is for equality for all. This past year, we've watched on a national level them throw back to the states what has been one of the worst decisions in my lifetime and many others. Because of this, it is important that we spend time and focus to make sure women have the reproductive rights that they deserve and have fought for the last decade.
Heather Summers.
Yes, thank you. Well, I will agree with many of the comments that Representative Howard has brought up concerning taxes and affordability. I think it's important to keep in context that Connecticut has become unaffordable, but it has been under the control of one-party Democrat rule for 40 years. So that is an important to keep that in context. My priorities for the next term are primarily public health. That's where I sit in as leadership and former chair. We have a real problem in Connecticut retaining and attracting physicians and clinicians to come here. That is going to leave our aging population in a very difficult position. We have bills that we have passed this year for physician and nurses recruitment that have started the process, but we need to continue that. I'm also a huge advocate of school-based health clinics. They are one of the most efficient ways to deliver healthcare to all. I'd like to see them in every single school across Connecticut. With the help of Representative Howard this year, we were able to get funding for a behavioral health center here right in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, that will help all of our students that are having behavioral issues be able to come now and into the future. I'm very keen on the environment. We have a huge recycling issue here in the state of Connecticut. The Mirror plant that takes most of our trash is closed. There is no plan to do anything for that. The DEEP has dropped the ball on that. That is something that you will feel in your taxes locally. CT Rail, as far as transportation, I've been an advocate of bringing Shoreline East more frequently to our area here. So not only does that increase tourism, but it helps us get cars off the road. I can go on and on. I have plans for a magnet healthcare high school that I think we absolutely need here. And disbanding Pura would absolutely help reduce our energy costs. Pura is under the control of DEEP. If you pull that out from underneath DEEP, it would make a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We're on to question 2. I feel like we're on a first name basis now, so I'll just use your first name. Question 2 is, the school systems need to deliver well-educated graduates to help our community, not just college ready, but prepared for the local workforce. Education budgets are so tight. What do you propose to assist students, the school systems, and local employers? Robert Boris. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
Thank you very much. I think, in the last 30 years, the world's transformed. When I did my dissertation for college, there was no internet. I went to the library and did photocopies. And now we have the entire supply chain is digitized. And I know we just went through COVID, and everyone is familiar with Zooming. The impact socially we're dealing with in terms of mental health issues and other, but in terms of education, we really need to be sure that our children have access to high-speed broadband and are educated and knowledgeable about how the internet works, the negatives and the positives, and are supported with a skill set in order to create jobs of the future in that area. Absolutely. A trade school education is important, but it's also digital. It's not a matter of just college educated kids. Being familiar with IT, understanding how data works, understanding how data is collected, understanding how to do data analysis, all of these things can be integrated into our school systems and our curriculums so that kids are able to come out of high school with a better ability to engage in the workforce. I think that it's very critical that we make sure that we don't ignore that. So that's what I'd say. And also, I think that we need to listen to parents and make sure that they have input in the educational curriculum for our kids. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Heather?
I actually forgot the question. Sorry. It was like on education. And can you repeat it? Sorry. And what we should do with...
It was school systems need to deliver well-educated graduates to help our community, not just college ready, but prepared for the local workforce. Education budgets are so tight. What do you propose to assist students, the school systems, and local employers?
Got it. Well, we actually are doing things right now. I know in the town of Griswold, we have a manufacturing curriculum within the standard high school that we've teamed up with local employers so that students can go, they're mentored, they take the curriculum, and they are offered a job right away. that we have the same thing going in Plainfield, Connecticut right now in manufacturing. We have a young manufacturing program through the state of Connecticut that we do for electric boat employers. But Griswold and Plainfield are doing it. I know that there is a new curriculum coming out in Stonington. I work closely with the Connecticut Building Trades Union. I'm happy to have their endorsement, and that is going to be launched next week with the Connecticut Home Builders. Again, a different kind of curriculum within the high school so that students can graduate with a skill and be educated and have the ability to go right into the workforce. When I graduated from high school a long time ago, you could graduate from Fitch High School with an LPN degree. I would like to bring that back. I think that's an important thing that we can do. Some schools have CNA programs, but an LPN degree is the perfect fit for long-term care. I would like to see more of that. We're starting it now, and there's lots of room to grow, but it enables a community to team up with your largest or your local employees, figure out what their needs are, create the curriculum. One of the issues we have is we need to be able to have flexibility in the credentialing of the people that are teaching those classes. It's really tough to find a nurse who is also a state certified teacher to be able to teach a nursing class. So we need to have flexibility. I have a bill in for that so that professionals can teach the class to those in the industries that are needed in the high school. And I think we have done a good job, but we need to do a lot more. Thank you.
Andre?
Thank you. It's so important that we let kids be kids. We are home to some of the best schools in Eastern Connecticut and, quite frankly, the state of Connecticut. Both Stonington and Groton Public Schools have done incredible work in our communities over the last few decades, teaching our kids. And it is so important that we continue to make critical investments and, most importantly, provide the funding necessary to continue running our great schools. Every year, every 2 years, when the state legislature debates the state budget, we always hear the questions of, do certain communities get too much money? I've been in debates on the education committee where I served when I served in the state legislature, hearing Stonington gets too much ECS funds. I couldn't disagree more. As your state representative, I will ensure that Stonington will continue to receive the ECS funds that they deserve so our kids can continue being learning in our great schools. I'm proud to be the only person in this race endorsed by AFT, representing our teachers here in the state of Connecticut. Our teachers have been hurt by the pandemic. It is so clear that we need to continue investing in our teachers, ensuring that we provide the trainings necessary to bring up the next generation of teachers in our great schools. And most importantly, we need to invest in early childhood education. We need to move into a direction of having universal pre-education. Kindergarten, for example, just a few years ago, it was half day, and we've moved into the direction of full time. And study after study shows that by investing in our kids when they're 3, that their life will change immeasurably. Thank you.
Jake?
Thanks for the question. First and foremost, I don't believe that schools are worker factories. They are citizen factories. And the thing that you get out of a comprehensive education is an understanding of the world that you live in, how to treat others around you, how to interact, and how to really think and concern yourself with the information that you're receiving from other people, and to draw your own conclusions about how the world works. And I think that training is something separate. And that's, for example, EB does training both in Rhode Island and in Connecticut. And in Rhode Island, when you go to training, you get paid by the state to train for the job. But in Connecticut, you don't. And I think that if you're going to train for a specific job, the company should be held responsible for that. And I think that that's okay. But I think what's important about a comprehensive education and getting good citizens coming out of the schools is that they're able to decide on their own what interests them and what solutions that they can come up with their own on their own to solve our problems. And what I'd really like to see is a program in Connecticut based on AmeriCorps that would allow for graduates of high school to pursue a service term of 2 years working in either education or law enforcement or whatever state need that they have an interest in, work for those 2 years in in that program and get a college education for free coming out of that. So I think that there's a lot of things that we can do for a brighter future for people to have better access to educational tools. But I also believe that the schools themselves are best left to the communities that are whose parents are engaged in the programs. Thank you.
Just under the bell. Ashley.
Absolutely. As a mom whose son has attended public schools here in Stonington, education is one of those things where I think we need to continue to expand. One of the best things that my son was fortunate to do was go to one of our local private preschools. However, I know that's not the case for everyone. So I too agree with expanding into preschool education and understand the importance of giving our kids a start from the very beginning. One of the other things I'm a big advocate for is actually apprenticeship programs. I look at the amazing work that we currently see occurring between the unions and apprenticeships, and I want to continue to expand on them. I also fully believe in tech schools. Not every child wants to go to college, but every child needs the ability to go to college. That is what we need to do, is make sure our schools give them the ability, but also give a route for those who don't wish to do so. It doesn't make them less of a being because they don't wish to explore a four-year university. It just makes them an easier pathway to be a part of our community. I am super excited to be able to continue to volunteer in the schools. It's been a big passion of mine. I really do understand the problems that we're facing in the education. I've been very vocal on education budgets for multiple years in this town. It is part of why I got involved in the Charter Revision Commission years ago, was to make sure we adequately funded our kids. I plan on bringing that same energy to Hartford when it comes to fighting for education and education ECS funding going back to our communities. I also, like other members up here, was proudly endorsed by AFT as well as the building trades, and I plan on directly working with them to make sure we provide opportunities for everyone moving forward so they can get a good job and be a part of our hardworking union across the state.
Greg.
Thank you. I think for kids to be successful in school, they ought to be in school. That's why last year at this time, I led a charge to get our kids back in school when the data from Massachusetts was clear that COVID was not being spread in schools at any rate near what it was in the community. Yet in Connecticut, we were keeping them home. And I was told time and time again by my own staff, you don't want to do this, it's bad for you politically. And I told them all the same thing, I don't care. I don't care if I get reelected or not. Our kids need us. They're suffering mentally, their education is suffering, and we're gonna get them back in school. And I'm proud to say that we did in a very short period of time. One of the other things, and I look out and I see some of our Board of Finance members and Board of Education members from these communities, one of the things that continues to cripple the Board of Education budgets is state mandates. It's a bunch of people coming to Hartford and saying, we're gonna tell teachers how to teach, most of whom have never been teachers. Our teachers locally, we are so fortunate. They have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, most of them, and a lot of them PhDs. But they're gonna have a bunch of 151 people in the House of Representatives tell them how to teach? That's absurd. These state mandates are crippling budgets. They don't fit every community, and we have to go back to local control on schools. The other thing I want to talk about is getting rid of state testing. Teachers tell me time and time again, state testing disrupts their classroom. They're teaching to a test. They aren't teaching kids to be successful in the world, in academics, or their life, or in the trades, or whatever job they want to do when they grow up. They're teaching them to a test, and it's not good for them. I don't know if it is or not, but I know our teachers say that it's not, and I trust them. Meanwhile, you have people in education who analyze these test results and say they're not a good measure. This tells us that it's not working. It's time that we get away from that costly state testing and we go to a different measure that's going to be more cost effective and a good measure and is something that our teachers think is a good idea. Thank you.
Farouk.
Well, ECS funding is flawed, by the way, and it needs to be fixed. And I look around this room and I share the sentiment about the people who serve here, the Board of Finance, Board of Education, Stonington Public School employees. Thank you for what you do. We need to support our teachers more, and we need to support our paraeducators and our staff members. We need to find a solution for our bus drivers issue in the state, and the state has a role to play in that. We need to do more, and we need to do more for the social emotional learning of our students. COVID has been very difficult on those kids, and we need to do more to support them socially, emotionally, and educationally. I also want to say that, teachers, parents are involved in their kids' education. Board of Educations are parents. Board of Education are elected by the public from the public. I appreciate the sentiment about parents being involved. We are involved. I am a parent. I am on the Board of Education. And we need more parents to come to Board of Education Board of Education meetings and be involved in their kids' education. That's how it works. When we have parents come to our meeting, we get them involved, we get them on committees. We've been very successful in getting everybody's voice listened to, heard, and involved. So please remember that boards of educations are parents. Thank you.
Thanks. With the end of question 2, we're going to take a slight pause for some FCC business.
You are listening to WBLQ Westerly and W276 DF Westerly.
That's the halftime show. Okay, we're moving right along to question 3. Take some notes. This is a long one. State legislation has opened the door with development incentives for projects such as data centers and affordable housing. Yet, town approvals and local neighborhood support is also critical to moving these projects forward. What is your position on these economic development initiatives, and what are your thoughts on the process that presently exists? How would you define success for these initiatives? First up is Jake.
So, my understanding of the question is that, in essence, do state programs that incentivize large-scale local developments result in successful town improvements? And I think that it's tough to say that in particular with the data center, that made a lot of sense. I mean, the town very strongly does not want it in place, and I think that you have to listen to the citizens of the town. With affordable housing, it's a little bit different. I would like to see that state funding to towns that do not have a particular ratio of affordable housing be denied state funding for their municipal budgets, because there's no other way to enforce it. So if your town really doesn't want affordable housing, that's fine. You should enjoy your local control. But guess what? The checks aren't coming. And that ratio, it doesn't have to be very high. But I believe that if we're going to enforce, we need affordable housing, absolutely. And there are a lot of towns, especially along the shoreline of Connecticut, that are concerned about where they go and how they're developed. And the oral school for us is one. But those kinds of programs that are mandated by the state are going to deny local control, and local control is important. So another piece on affordable housing, while I have the 30 seconds, is that we don't actually have affordable housing here in Connecticut. Affordable housing is 30% of your gross take-home pay. So for a bank wouldn't give you a loan unless you could justify 30% for your housing expense. For somebody making minimum wage, that would be $728 a month. The market rates at the 2 developments in town are $1,450 a month and $1,600 a month in the affordable housing sections of town.
I think that means your time is up. Robert.
Thank you very much. So, why do local communities have pushback about housing? Well, you look at Branford Manor for one instance. This is a situation where the federal government put a facility in Groton, and we have community members who have been suffering for decades with mold issues, and there is no accountability, no response from our federal delegation to do an audit or to help these individuals with mold that they've been suffering with. Andre was state representative at a time. He didn't do anything when he was in Hartford. To be fair to Andre, Hartford can't do a lot in this particular issue. This is a federal issue. And when a community sees this and then they're told, you're the fault, you're not approving affordable housing, but we haven't cleaned up our act where there's any accountability, there's any responsiveness, it's not fair to turn to the community and say, you need to just, take your medicine, you're the ones that are wrong. The HUD model was designed by people on high who condemned generations of kids to live in an area that in a facility that was segregated from the rest of the community, that did nothing to integrate, did nothing to include them. And that wasn't designed by local people. That was designed by people on high trying to tell us how we deal with affordable housing. So it is an issue. And this gets back to local control. We need to be sure if we're going to have tough discussions, we're going to have them locally. And your opinions as as taxpayers and community members are strategically important. And Hartford can provide guidance, but we need to figure this out as a community. Absolutely. And whenever someone on high forces something down here, the results aren't good. And back to Branford Manor. I asked Senator Blumenthal to please ask for an audit of Branford Manor's funding.
Farouk.
So 2 issues here. You asked about the data center, and I think the question, because there was a data center proposed in Groton. Well, the community in Groton doesn't want it. Data centers are good projects, but not in Groton, and the community doesn't want it. We have a way of life that community wants to preserve. We should listen to our community, and we should react to that. I'm not against data centers. I'm for the community, and that's where we should start with, listening to our community. On affordable housing, similar to that what happened in Pawcatuck, we need to listen to our community. If you live in Pawcatuck like I lived for the last 22 years, try to go to Westerly downtown is not an easy task. Driving, you cross and turn left and take your own life in your own hand. Add a traffic light there and you're creating a problem. So the community says, yes, we want housing, but not at that location. Listen to the community. Let's work with our community. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. So let's listen to our community. Affordable housing is important, but affordable housing has to be built around infrastructure as well. And infrastructure is not just sewer, water, electricity. It's broadband, accessibility, it's public transportation. It's many things that need to be an ecosystem where that affordable housing exists. I agree, Branford Manor needs to be addressed. And on state level, we can put health codes that enforce these things. And we need to work with the federal government so that they all work in symbolic relationship on this. Thank you.
Heather.
Sure, I think these are 2 different issues. There was a data center bill that passed the legislature last year, which allowed hyperscale data centers to come to Connecticut, but they have to have a host agreement. So they have to agree with the community has to agree to host them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That bill that passed, Groton was presented with a possible data center. They chose no. End of story. They'll go someplace else. And if it works for them. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But at least it gives you an opportunity to bring new industry here to the state of Connecticut. And data centers are attracted to Connecticut because there are no data centers in New England. If you don't like data centers, you should put down your phone because there's not any more cloud storage space. So that absolutely gives local control. As far as affordable housing is concerned, I think it's really important to recognize that, especially in the instance in Pawcatuck, a lot of this is driven by your planning and zoning committee and what they zone as ability to have affordable housing and what they don't zone as an ability to have affordable housing. There is no question there is a desperate need for affordable housing in the state of Connecticut. Housing and taxes are so high that we're forcing everyone that's young pretty much out. Affordable housing in some instances are for our young teachers, our young police officers, our young engineers that are working in electric boats. So we need more, but I am an advocate of local control. I think we need to do more to explain to the general public how planning and zoning works and how it works with the town to set the zones where you can have affordable housing. And affordable housing for you and myself may be very different than what people perceive as affordable housing. I like to call it mixed income housing because that's really what it is. Thank you.
Ashley?
So, as was touched on a little bit with the affordable housing, we all know that as a resident of Pawcatuck and with Pawcatuck in general, we have watched a continual push for all large-scale development of affordable housing into our community. One of the things that drives me nuts the most when we discuss affordable housing is we only talk about large-scale development. No one ever wants to talk about other things that would be constituted as affordable housing. We hear recently that all affordable housing needs to continue to go in our neighborhoods in Pawcatuck, that we cannot spread it across town. But the reality is we are not promoting affordable housing in small scale and in low density, low traffic areas. For example, under current affordable housing, when we look at numbers of units, if it is a small number of units, you are able to do these smaller, minimal affordable housing plans, usually typically up to 5 units, where they have no direct impact on city sewers or water or anything else. When you're at 5 units or under, we never address this, but when you're at 5 units or under, you have an ability to do an affordable housing plan off of private well, off of private septic. This is my number one issue when we discuss affordable housing, is we are only discussing large scale. We live in communities where we do not want to continue to push for large-scale development. So as we continue to discuss affordable housing, I want to continue to look at how we inform others to the smaller scale affordable housing developments that make sense in our communities, and not just this box model that we're seeing coming out of Hartford and constantly promoted. I think we have amazing opportunities to actually provide some real affordable housing across this area of Connecticut, but we need to do it in a way that actually makes sense for our communities. And I will continue to be an advocate for affordable housing, but looking at doing so in small scale and not large developments in high traffic, high density areas that put our communities at risk.
Andre?
All neighborhoods matter. Whether it's Branford Manor in the city of Groton, whether it's Smiler's Wharf in Mystic, whether it's the Mystic Oral School, what do all of those projects have in common? The residents resoundingly spoke out about the conditions or the, quite frankly, corrupt nature of these deals. Let's call it for what it is. People have risen up, neighborhoods across our district, speaking out against these issues and demanding that we have elected leaders that listen to their concerns. As a town councilor, I voted against permitting data centers in Groton because hundreds of residents descended upon our town council meetings pleading to us not to degrade our environment, not to allow noise pollution that neighborhoods miles away could hear. And we voted it down. As a result, we will no longer have data centers. I've been endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. I've been endorsed by the Sunrise Movement because they recognize I'm not only an environmental champion, but I put our neighborhoods first. As your state representative, I will be your voice. I will be your neighborhood's voice on important issues impacting your neighborhood, whether they're short-term rentals, whether they're Branford Manor. By the way, I grew up in Branford Manor, the backyard of Branford Manor, playing with kids in Branford Manor. So to insinuate that I don't care about Branford Manor issues is beyond me, especially when I picked up the phone, called Senator Blumenthal. Days later, he was there to listen to their concerns and has been working on this issue. I'm the only candidate in this race who has demanded default of the tax stabilization agreement that permits related companies, which owns Branford Manor, to abate over $500,000 of taxes every year while people are dying in mold It's inexcusable, and it's about time we have effective leadership in Hartford being our voice.
Greg?
Thank you. So a lot of these issues are surrounded by, a government that's just gotten too big. Okay, so the federal government has to deal with federal issues. The state government should be dealing with state issues, and the local government should be dealing with local issues. And we've gotten too far away from that. As you heard me say in education, I'll say it again. Up in Hartford, we continuously try to push this one-size-fits-all on 169 municipalities. That does not work. What works in one town won't work in the next. What works in one city won't work in the next. What works in New London County doesn't work in the Litchfield Hills, and so on and so forth. So as you heard the senator say, the data bill that we ran, the data center bill, was a very, very good bill because it opened the door for municipalities who said, hey, we could use this tax revenue. This is a good thing for our environment, for our local economy and our community if that's what we want. But we kept the door not so wide open that the community got to decide if they wanted that in their community or not. We had that local control. Affordable housing, yeah, that's a problem. Of course it's a problem. The housing market is very, very high. Everybody knows that. I talk to my brother all the time, who's HR director at Electric Boat, and he tells me, Greg, we need engineers. You heard me say earlier, we need to hire 15,000 people in 30 years. They can find them, some of them, but they have nowhere to live here. So that is an issue, and it's an issue that we need to address. What can the state do? Instead of ramming a one-size-fits-all affordable housing law, if you will, all the way down to the municipalities and have them try to work within those constraints of that particular one-size-fits-all law, what we could be doing is grants for buildings like the one on Mechanic Street that is falling down. And just because it's not a nonprofit, we can't get state money through a grant to stabilize that thing so somebody will want to invest it. You think the people at Pawcatuck don't want that thing to look a lot better than it does instead of falling down into a pile of rubble, which is not only a safety hazard, but certainly an eyesore? It's exactly what people want. They want those things developed. And we could do that in the state if we did it in not a one-size-fits-all, but a municipality to municipality opportunity for them to decide. Thank you.
Okay, that completes that question. Question 4 is a shorter question. Women's reproductive rights are now regulated at the state level. What is your position on a woman's right to choose? First up is Andre.
Shouldn't be my decision. Unfortunately, we've allowed a Supreme Court, and quite frankly, an illegitimate Supreme Court, decide the fate of women's bodies and people who are capable of having pregnancies. It's wrong. Thankfully, in our state, due to the fact that we do have a Democratic legislature, both in the Senate and in the House, and a Democratic governor, Ned Lamont, we codified Roe versus Wade, and ensured that we would not strip a woman's right to choose here in Connecticut. It is fully protected, and we can do so much more in terms of supporting women's health, supporting the health care for women so that they can have productive lives in our communities. I will be a pro-women state representative, whether it's supporting childcare, whether it's supporting our young girls, making sure that they're getting the best education that they can receive, making sure that we're supporting their sports just as much as our boys' sports. I'm proud to be endorsed by Planned Parenthood, proud to be endorsed by Choice CT, and very proud to be endorsed by NOW, the National Organization of Women. So just rest assured, once upon a time, when I served in the legislature, I served as a Republican. And even then, I was supported by both NARAL and Planned Parenthood because I've been a loud voice for choice, loud voice for abortion rights. So rest assured, I will always fight for you on your behalf. It is so important that we speak so loudly on this issue when we go to the polls this November. This is a life or death issue, and I will always be on your side when it comes to the right to choose.
Farouk.
Thank you for the question. I think every woman listening to us here and every woman in this room need to be concerned if we send delegation to Washington that will support abortion ban across our country. The first thing they teach you in law school, that federal law will supersede state law. So let's be very careful about that point. It's important that we protect women's choice. And it's women's choice. It's not legislators' choice. It's not men's choice. It's so interesting that we don't find legislators trying to govern men bodies, but they're trying to govern women bodies. Shame on them. There is no place for that. And making abortion illegal will only make safe abortion illegal. Abortion will exist in a legal or illegal manner. If you're a state legislator and you support women's choice, well, you better fund it. You better vote for the money to fund that choice. It's not good enough that you say to us that you support women's choice. Let's complete that formula by funding that choice. And let's complete that formula by making sure that on a federal level, we don't have legislators that are going to tell women what to do to their body. That's not acceptable. Women, come out and vote to protect your freedom, because that's your first right they're going to take. God forbid what else they're going after. Thank you.
Robert?
We could have a Republican governor. We could have an independent governor. We could have a Democrat governor. I don't care. If they move against women's right to choose, I will fight them with everything that I have.
Greg?
Thank you. So for a long time in the state of Connecticut, the issue of viability has been where the abortion issue lands. Once a growing fetus has reached its own viability where it can survive outside a woman's body, it can no longer be terminated. That's exactly where I think women's rights should be. That's exactly where I think the law should be. I would not support expanding that. I would not support restricting it. Much has been made about a vote that I made on a bill last session. It's important to know that that bill did not expand or restrict that at all. What that bill did was it expanded who could do surgical abortions. It's important to know that due to contraception and education, abortions in the state of Connecticut are down 1/3 from 2009 to 2019. So it doesn't seem to me that there's an issue of availability to it. The Connecticut Medical Society testified that expanding the scope of practice in that bill to PAs to do surgical abortions was not in the best interest of safety of young women specifically. Why do I say that? In the state of Connecticut, you do not need parental consent to terminate a pregnancy. And some of you might think, well, that kind of makes me uncomfortable. Well, it makes me uncomfortable too, but I'll tell you that in 20 years of policing, that is necessary. It may be uncomfortable, but some things are uncomfortable, and that is necessary. So if we have a young lady who has found herself in a situation where she's made a decision that she wants to terminate a pregnancy that she has, and she's doing that without her parents there, for goodness sakes, I think she should at least consult with a doctor for her safety. I knew this was going to happen. I was told in real time, if you vote against this bill, they'll say you're anti-choice. Let them say what they want. I don't go up there and make votes for political reasons. I go out there and make votes that are in the best interest of the people in my district, and that's why I did that. I'm a decidedly pro-choice legislator. I've been a pro-choice person since I started talking about the issue at the age of 19, and I will remain a pro-choice legislator. Thank you.
Ashley?
It's interesting hearing somebody say I'm a pro-choice legislator, right? Because at the end of the day, your voice is your vote. Bottom line. If you vote no, you voted no. That is the bottom line. And to sit here and say that that did nothing to expand access for women, let me explain why it did. We are now seeing states that provide abortion care being overloaded in a system as women are forced to run from the states where they currently live to get the care that they deserve. So when you sit here and you say it does nothing, when we expand the number of providers that can give a safe method for women, that is what we are doing. We are expanding the number of providers that can give a safe method of abortion to women. That is what this bill did. This bill also legally protected women. This legally protected our providers, and this is a bill that was necessary. I am sick of hearing that this bill did nothing. I am proud to be endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I'm proud to be endorsed by CT Now. And I'm endorsed by them because not only have I volunteered with these organizations for years, but I have stood up time and time again and said, there is no gray area. Bottom line, if you vote no on any protection of women's reproductive rights, you voted no. I will never vote no. I will stand on that floor until I'm blue in the face, fighting for every opportunity for women to make their own decisions about their bodies, a decision that they deserve, and a decision that nobody is taking away from them in the state of Connecticut. So I want to just make that very clear. This was a good bill, and I'm thankful that some of the Republicans across the aisle were even willing to see that and stand up and put women first before their party and support a bill that continued to defend women's rights to choose in the state of Connecticut.
Jake.
One of the problems with this issue overall is that it inflames us, right? It drives us apart from each other because there is this sort of core tenet of who we are. And for me, I believe that the promise of America is a self-fulfilled life, is one in which you can be the kind of person that you want to be. And for a woman, that means that she has to have the right to terminate a pregnancy. Morally, it's ambiguous to me, and I have a difficult time personally, but I believe moreover that the right cannot be infringed. You can't touch it. But for those of us who are like me, or maybe a little further along the spectrum, that really do think it's outright wrong, the thing that we can do to support women is to make sure that there's access to contraceptives, to make sure that there's good sexual education at times that make sense for it's younger and younger children, but everybody was 13 once. You know what it was like. The point being that if we take a two-pronged approach to how we reduce the number of abortions by first preventing as many unwanted pregnancies as possible by supporting good sex education and access to contraceptives, and then second, for women who are making the choice because they are faced with economic circumstances that are going to make their viable pregnancy unwanted for that reason, we should be supporting those women by having access to early child education, to child care, to financial support for them and their families, so that they're not driven to make that decision for those reasons. But the right cannot be infringed.
Heather.
Yes, that bill came out of public health. I supported that bill. I'm endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I am a Republican who is pro-choice, pro-women. And I just want to do a few corrections here. We have codified our abortion laws in state statute, and that was a bipartisan effort. Not all Democrats support it. In fact, most of the Democrats in the Senate this past year voted against this bill, especially those coming out of Bridgeport and the women. So this is not a partisan issue. This is really an issue as far as what your core beliefs are. I believe that a woman has autonomy over her own body. It may not be my choice, it may not be my friend's choice, but it's a choice that you need to have. And we need to keep it legal, which it is here in the state of Connecticut. There's no issue with abortion. It's codified in state statute, it's not going anywhere. The particular bill that we're talking about last year, what it did is it updated the scope of practice, which is what allows clinicians to perform certain procedures for both PAs and APRNs. They're almost level in the medical world. And it allowed them to perform up to their scope of practice. A surgical abortion is a procedure that is within their scope of practice. The only reason we had to update it is because years ago when they codified it in statute, they only listed MD. We update the scope of practice in public health all the time, every session, multiple times. So this was something that normally we wouldn't have to do, but because of the codification, we had to. It also provides coverage for our clinicians, which are fewer and fewer in the state of Connecticut, that if they perform a procedure that is legal in the state of Connecticut, some third party in Texas can't sue them personally for performing that procedure. I thought it was very important to support this. We need to support our women and support the clinicians doing those procedures.
Thank you, candidates. That completes question 4. Question 5. The current economy and burden of inflation is impacting local residents. How do you propose to help your constituents? As an example, are there specific taxes or programs that you would modify or introduce to address these challenges? First response is Robert.
Thank you very much. Inflation. What we're seeing right now here is what happens when a result of all the COVID injection of money and the federal government granting us money on the state level. And the issue with that is that when this money runs out, we're going to have to readjust our spending. But in the short term, the difficulty is that inflation makes gas prices go high, and that impacts the working families and people who can least afford it. So the legislature had the right approach to start addressing gas prices and gas taxes early on. They didn't go far enough. One of my issues with taxes like that in general is typically it sits on the working people and people who can afford it least. And it's the same thing with our inflation at this area right now. I think that we need to do everything we can to mitigate the impact on working families of inflation. It cripples seniors and people on fixed income. We can come up with arrangements where we maybe can do something on local taxes, fixing them, indexing them. It's a real problem, and we need to address it. We need to figure out ways, and I would definitely be open and interested in hearing people's ideas and listening to the community in ways that we can help the most least fortunate in our community that are impacted by high prices. And thank you.
Greg.
So the way that the United States operates now, inflation becomes a national issue much more than it is a state issue. So it is difficult to address that just at the state level. But as I said earlier, what we can do is stop taking so much money from people who are trying to work and trying to make it by reducing, as I said, the income tax from 5 to 4%, reduce the sales and use tax down to 5.99, especially as inflation's up because it's a percentage. So we're not even seeing a massive revenue drop with that. We got to extend the gas tax holiday that we did already and include diesel fuel. That HUT tax is just going to cost us more money at the register. And if it costs us more money at the register, you're paying more in sales tax. We have to stop squeezing working families. We have a plan, and I have a plan. We worked on it to push accelerate the pension annuities exemption to 100% this year. But unfortunately, that got struck down as well to keep folks here. The other thing that we have to confess is that while it's difficult to deal with inflation as a small state in a big country, there's a lot of other things that we're trying to address that are hurting our business. I understand that climate change is real. There's no doubt about that. I also understand that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, but that's not something that Connecticut can fix on its own. And so we continue to straddle our businesses with regulations and red tape that is driving up costs. The second thing that's driving up costs is that what they have to continue to lose revenue because they cannot staff their store, their business, their restaurant, whatever it is, because we don't have enough people showing up to work. Because folks have calculated, well, if I show up to work and I do this many hours, my after-tax take-home is this, it's not worth me showing up. We have to cut taxes back to get people back to work, to get our economy regulated.
Jake.
So I've been out a lot, talking to quite a few people, and the people that are here the most that are squeezed, what they're going through is that they're working 2 part-time jobs or more sometimes. And one of the ways that we can help address essentially what Greg is talking about, people who are calculating that actually work isn't for me because I'm going to lose money, is that we need to encourage full-time employment. And we can do that by allowing our small businesses to provide Husky Care at cost to their employees and to penalize them when they hire part-time employees in order to cover their otherwise full-time equivalents. So let's say you have 20 employees and they're all working 20 hours, when instead you could have had 10 full-time employees and provided them with benefits as they would expect. I know that many small businesses have a tough time affording healthcare, but it's one of the biggest expenses that people are going through, and the way that we can encourage people to show back up to work is to incentivize our small businesses to provide benefits and full-time employment so that people can live more satisfied, more self-actualized, more meaningful lives. And we're essentially subsidizing, you and I, the taxpayer, we are paying for the healthcare of these people who are working 2 and 3 part-time jobs who are not getting benefits. And the people who are making the money on top of that, those are the people who are employing them. And that's not just small businesses. That's Walmart. That's Dunkin' Donuts. That's companies out there who are relying on a mix of part-time employment that is making it very difficult for people to have meaningful careers and meaningful lives and afford the kind of services and life that they deserve and their children deserve.
Ashley?
The reality of inflation is this is not something that anyone in this room is going to be able to solve alone. This is something that has impacted us across the nation. What we can do is make sure that we support the bills that go directly back to our working families across the state of Connecticut. For example, the budget this past year gave over $600 million in tax breaks to working families. It also is why many families, including myself as a single mom, we were able to get those child tax credit checks last month. That was money that we were able to get directly back into the hands of working families at a time when they needed it the most. These are things that are instant ways to support families. Continue to look at how we stop allowing the highest tier income earners in the state of Connecticut getting out from paying their fair share. I will be honest, and some people don't like that, but that is the reality. We have put too much pressure on working class families when it comes to our tax base in this state. We need to do everything we can to support working class families and continue to reduce the tax burden on those who are already not working in what would be a livable wage in this state. We've heard a lot about employment, and I'm gonna touch on that just for a second. You know, as somebody who's worked in the restaurant industry for quite some time, both in management and in waitress positions. For example, I've worked in a field where our waitresses are still making $6.37 an hour. I say that because during COVID at Takeout Only, there were waitresses who still went to work every single day for $6.37 an hour with takeout only and no tables. And I bring this up because it goes to a bigger problem. We continually have to go back and make sure we are actually paying livable wages in this state. We had a huge fight for 15 years ago. And I ask everyone in this room, could you live off of a $15 minimum wage and support your family if you had to? We need to continue to go back and readdress these situations to make sure everyone in our communities have the ability to live where they work and be able to sustain as a family.
Andre?
All politics is local, so let's bring it home. The Chamber of Commerce's have the privilege of working with some of the greatest small businesses in not just southeastern Connecticut, but across our state. Whether it's Breakwater or Noah's or Dog Watch, or, you know, if we go down to the city by Par 4, the Barn now in Pequannock Bridge. There are Sift. There are so many wonderful eateries and restaurants here in Stonington and Groton that we have to support. On the town council, we have what we call our Economic Development Fund. And through that fund, we were able to provide funding for infrastructure improvements that allowed SIFT to expand, that allowed several businesses within downtown Mystic to expand at a time when they did not have the resources to do it on their own. I was proud to support that on the town council, and it is so critically important that at the state level, we have individuals with those experiences who will have relationships with our small business owners, and it's absolutely critical. Local food producers, such as our farms, such as our fishing fleet, aquaculture. I'm probably the only person in this race who's actually worked on an oyster farm. And it's so important that we support those businesses because they strengthen our community both economically and culturally. They're good for our environment. They invest in our people. They hire our local people. And it is so critically important that we support those investments for in years to come. So that means cutting the red tape, as has been suggested tonight, ensuring that they are not overtaxed in addressing the sales tax, for example. In reducing the sales tax. So there are a lot of opportunities at the state level to certainly support our local businesses, but I never want them to get lost in the shuffle with the behemoths of Electric Boat and Pfizer, because they hire and retain so many wonderful employees, and we ought to continue supporting them.
Farouk.
Well, inflation is a global problem, by the way. It's not just here. And nobody here on this side or that side is going to fix it tomorrow, next year, or in a few years. There will be a few years before we can see that inflation slows down and that we can get manufacturing back up and we can get goods on the road and goods in places. We're faced with many issues in here in town with like finding products, finding HVAC system, or the cost of that HVAC system. So those costs are going to continue to be higher and going to continue to be a problem. What legislature can do is eliminate the gas tax. It's not good enough they sunset it for a period of time. They need to work on eliminating the gas tax. We need to eliminate the car tax. I know it's a municipal issue. We can support it on a state level. We have surplus of funds that will continue for the next few years. That funds needs to go back into our businesses, needs to go back into our farms, needs to go back into your wallet. It's not good enough. Yes, we want a rainy day fund. It's a rainy day. Welcome to reality. We need to cut taxes. We need to eliminate some of these taxes, and we need to work with our farms. They cannot be taxed. Businesses need support. Small business, large business need support. Infrastructure needs to be improved. We need to invest in rail. We need to invest in broadband. We need to invest in Connecticut. I believe in Connecticut and the people in Connecticut, we need to invest more in Connecticut. Thank you.
Heather?
Yes. I agree with many of what some of the speakers have said here tonight. I think it's important to recognize, obviously, inflation is a global issue. And we are seeing here in Connecticut what's happening based on the policies coming out of Washington. And we are going to continue to see the price of gas increase. We have things that we are able to do here in the state of Connecticut that can help offset the inflation. We can help to look to reduce taxes. This year, we gave a $600 million tax credit to the citizens of the state of Connecticut. The Republicans wanted to give more. That was voted down. We do have an ability to go back and do that again. The Republicans wanted to eliminate the tax on diesel gas. That was shot down. We have an ability to go back and do that again. We do need to get rid of the regulation and the red tape. It is staggering and it's suffocating our small businesses. I have been endorsed by NFIB, which focuses on independent small businesses, and I understand I've had a small business in Connecticut. There's other things that we can do that come around to this. You heard my opponent talk about the surplus. We have a surplus, but the next 2 years, we're forecasted to have a huge deficit in the state of Connecticut. So do we want to spend all that surplus now, or do we want to make sure that we don't have to give our citizens another tax increase next year? So you have to look at it in the long term. Our farmers, the Republicans and myself in particular, have been advocating to give a direct subsidy to farmers. Their input costs are up 169% because all of their products are petroleum based. They're not going to survive. And our governor has refused to do that. So there are things we can do to offset inflation, to help give relief to the citizens of Connecticut, but we need both parties willing to work together. My opponent's talking about tax relief. I would love to see that from the majority party in more than what we've seen so far. So I continue to work. There are many things that we can do, but we have to have somebody who can work in a bipartisan fashion to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We've reached the end of the regular questions. Candidates will now conclude with their 90-second maximum closing statement. We're going to start with Heather.
Well, thank you for hosting this. I think tonight you have seen that it's important and that experience matters. And experience matters when you send someone to Hartford. I have been on a town council at the local level. I was a mayor for 2 years. I've run for a lieutenant governor. I've had 6 years to create long-lasting relationships on both sides of the aisle. I have been able to deliver results for the district in millions of dollars that have been brought to this district. And remember, the district is not just Stonington. It runs from Stonington and Groton all the way up to Plainfield, and the needs are very different within the district. I have been endorsed by the Independent Party, Planned Parenthood, the state building trades, the Connecticut Realtors, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Stonington Police Union, and many more. I feel that I am the best person to do the job. I am open to suggestions. I work with both parties, and experience does matter. And I ask for your vote this Tuesday, November 4th, so that I can go back and continue the work that I have started and that I have a record of. I'm proud of my record, and I hope that you will support me. You can vote for me on the Republican line or the independent line. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out, and I will be happy to get back to you. Thank you.
Next up is Robert.
Thank you very much. Imagine a future where the 41st District has fulfilled its potential, preserved its character, and capitalized on the current revolutions in technology, economics, and energy. As your representative, I'll work alongside every one of you to ensure this future is a matter of if, not when. When, not if. Wow. All right. I have. Yeah, for me, okay, there's no greater professional joy in life than having the opportunity to use my education, experience, and skills that I've learned over my lifetime to make my community exceptional. It's time to move forward, and I'm honored to be endorsed by the Connecticut Building Trades and the Stonington Police Union. On November 8th, you can vote for me as a Republican, you can vote for me as an independent, or you can vote for me as a member of your community who sees great things we can do if we work together. Thank you very much.
Farouk.
I agree with Senator Summers. Can you hear me? Okay, excellent. I agree with Senator Summers. Experience matters. Look me up. See what I did so far. My career is long, and I've served on many levels in many capacities, and experience matters. Working across the aisle does matter. I agree. And I'll be that person who can work across the aisle. I will deliver, and I am endorsed by the people of the 18th. That's what matters. You who matters. And if you want to vote for me, vote on November 8th, not the 4th. Thank you.
All right, next up is Jake.
I don't know how many of you have had this experience, but there comes a point in your life sometimes when you get so fed up with something that you just decide, that's it, I've had enough. And that's what my campaign is sort of about. I know I'll get there. I had enough of the way that we were talking to each other. I had enough of the way that we have separated from each other. I've had enough of wedge issues driving us from paying attention to the majority of the work that needs to be done. The role that I'm going to play as your legislator is somebody who writes reviews and votes on laws that are increasingly complex. The cannabis law alone was almost 400 pages. And it's filled with little insights and little grabs from very specific interested parties. And it's going to be my job and my responsibility to understand why those things are there and to represent your interests, not the interests of groups, including the parties, that are trying to distract us from the real work of government. The real work of government is providing a community that you can thrive in, that you can be the kind of person that you want to be, and the policies that I'm going to support are going to provide that for you. Thanks.
Ashley.
I want to start by thanking the Chambers for hosting tonight and thanking all of you for coming out, as well as thanking everyone watching along at home. One of the biggest things that I said when I announced my campaign was, this won't just be about me. This is about all of you. Every day I have the opportunity to go out and hear from voters, and it has been the biggest pleasure to get to know the voters across the 43rd and hear what's important to them. As a single mom, somebody who is still working part-time, and somebody who is also volunteering at a local equine facility, I know the importance of everything we do each day, day in and day out, when it comes to giving back to our community. I am proud to have this opportunity to sit here before you today, but I'm more proud to have the opportunity every day to hear from each of you of what's important across the 43rd District. I'm asking everyone, I know there's tons of topics we did not get to go ahead and go onto my website. It's just www.ashleyglease.com. You can sign up, learn more about tons of other topics of interest, including things I support, including making sure we take care of our veterans in this community. That's been a big one with me since I do volunteer with a veterans program locally. But I encourage you all, please go on my website, find out more, and make sure you come out November 8th and do your part. We only are as good as who we send to Hartford, so please support me in my journey up to Hartford.
Andre.
Again, thank you, Ocean Community Chamber and Mystic Chamber, for putting on this incredible forum. It's so important that every resident is equipped with the information and knowledge to make informed decisions when you head to the ballot box this November. So again, thank you, and thank you to my competitors for participating in this debate forum as well. When we get up to Hartford, we're going to roll up our sleeves, we're going to listen, and we're going to do the people's work. I have no problem picking up the phone and consulting the advice and counsel of your First Select Woman, your Board of Finance Chair, your Board of Education Chair, and your Board of Selectmen, and in Groton, our Town Manager, our Town Councilors, Board of Education members. As it has been mentioned, it is so important that we have an individual representing our needs that has the experience. I've served on the town council the last 5 years. I've already served up in Hartford in the state legislature. I have relationships on both sides of the aisle, and I will use those relationships to get what our district deserves. I will focus on the 5 E's, as I mentioned: educational excellence, our economic recovery, energy affordability, ethics reform, and most importantly, environmental quality. Climate action is one of the most important issues that we must confront for the years to come, and I will be on the front lines being a voice for change. Thank you again for this opportunity. Can't wait to work with you all, and look forward to earning your vote on November 8th on the Democratic line and the Working Families line.
Greg.
Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to my opponent for her participation as well. You know, this time of year, everybody's in a sprint to November 8th. And for me, it's not really a sprint to November 8th. It's a continued marathon run that started 28 years ago when I decided to get in public service as a 14-year-old who wanted to go out and help save lives. And all along the way, it's been a marathon. And 2 years ago, I added a little bit of weight and kept the pace going. And I understand what goes on in the 43rd District because I am out there every single day. And I've been out there every single day for 20 years, understanding what goes on in my communities, understanding the struggles. And we live the struggles. We've heard a lot about working families today. I'm going to tell you, where I am today is because my wife and I worked our buns off when our boys were little. 4 jobs between us, 260 days in a row without a day off, working 2 jobs, one for $14 an hour, just so that we can put food on our table, put money away for the future, and work together. I would get 2-3 hours of sleep at night because Shana had to go to work at 6 in the morning. I didn't get home till 2 or 3 o'clock for my job at the police department. We know what struggles are, and we worked hard through it. We were determined, we were committed, and we've now taken that work ethic together, and we're continuing to give it back to this community, not just as a state rep, but what we do for youth organizations, the amount of time she said, go ahead and go when I had to go to work because somebody in this community need me. That's our family values, and that's what goes to Hartford, and that's what will continue to go to Hartford, and will continue to do a great job for you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you to the candidates. We appreciate your participation. We wish you all the success in the election. It's also been my pleasure. It's the only non-scripted line. It's been my pleasure to serve you guys as the moderator. You know, I know most of you personally, so I wish everybody success, and I'm going to throw it to Lisa.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to Maria for providing the timing. It's a tough pressure, high pressure job. You did awesome. Thank you to Grace for filming and your work putting this event together with the team at the Mystic Chamber. This also goes to you folks behind the scenes who did so much, and thank you to La Grua. This concludes Stonington Candidates Forum, co-sponsored in a true collaborative partnership between the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. All the candidates are to be commended for their passion, dedication in seeking a position of public service. And we want to thank the Mystic River Press, Westerly Sun, BLQ, Frank from SEC TV, and now Bruce Flax has the final remarks, and then you'll be on your way.
You're listening to WBLQ Westerly and W276DF Westerly.
Thank you. This is very, very brief. I do want to thank the candidates for participating as well and showing some faith in the two chambers. To our live audience and viewers at home, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found this program to be informative. We encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote on November 8th by using the mail-in ballot or by visiting on that date. On behalf of the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce and Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce, we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and now you can applaud your candidates.